Hello and welcome to my cellar. Almost said basement. Same thing, I guess. This is likely to be a little rushed. I apologize in advance. In 7 hours, I have to get up and drive to the airport so we can go to the Keys, Key West. Actually, Big Pine Key is where my son and daughter-in-law live, and we have not visited them since they moved. So we're going to take a little 3-day vacay in the Keys. To comment on the individual who wrote you about disliking their DM catering to certain individuals and everyone argue about the tactical aspects, I would recommend that player to offer their services to DM an adventure and to be able to show their style and expectations. This could help inspire the other DM to see another's view and only strengthen the group's overall experience. Okay, that's possible. I would predict otherwise. It's damn hard being a DM. Damn hard. You got to think on your feet. You got to be firm but fair with your friends. And you got to deliver bad news when it happens to your friends. It's tough. I know. And you know what? Give him a chance to do it one time and I'll bet he shuts up. Okay, you run it the way you want. Because he'll find out it isn't a piece of cake. And it's easy to offend the other players that apparently the current DM thinks need to be mollycoddled. Which is a shame in and of itself, but that's something for another time. Okay, update on the what did we call this? The Gary Con Adventures is being printed even as I speak, being bound, and I believe he's going to be shipping copies to the Kickstarter next week, I believe. I don't want to put him over a barrel, but I believe that's the plan. What to do when the dog eats your dice? I remember that one. I had no idea you wrote it until today. Although I didn't come to Dragon Magazine or D&D until the late Kim Mohan was editor-in-chief, number 67 was my first issue, I certainly read and reread that one in the Best of Dragon Volume 1. Best of Dragons 1 and 2 were my favorite D&D related publications as a kid. I'd often keep them in my backpack in junior high and pull them out for independent reading in class, study hall, at lunch, or whenever boredom crept in at school. For me, some of the most imaginative stuff for D&D came from the Dragon's first 80 issues. You're right, it did. Because the bindings that were first and second edition hadn't been woven onto the game yet. Best of Dragon 1 and 2 compiled the best of the best. Love them. Thank you. I see your pen name for the Dice article was Omar Qualish. Was this a D&D character of yours? It was a pen name I used, and yeah, the last name Qualish was a name in my campaign. Not a character, a big bad evil guy. And was it the inspiration for their Apparatus, Qualish magazine? Okay, I got a story there, yes. I came into work one day, and Brian Bloom shouted down the 8-foot hallway. It wasn't very long. Hey, what's the name of that character yours in your campaign? And I said, Qualish. He goes, okay. I said, why? Well, he just became an inventor. Brian had cooked up this mechanical crawdad thing and decided to name it after, accredit it to my high-level wizard bad guy thing. It was more neutral than bad. But he had his bad side. So that's how the Apparatus got its name. It just had my characters tacked onto it. No, I didn't. My character didn't invent it or anything. That was something that Brian Bloom came up with. Lost Adventures of Gary Kahn. That's what that book is called. I'm in a hurry. I'm sorry. Yeah, he had the Apparatus was in, I think, the last supplement. I also really love those first Best of Dragon compilations. Really fun stuff and extra handy back in the day when it wasn't easy to get back issues of Dragon so easily. I actually have an amusing story from probably the early to mid-90s when I called a number from an ad in the back of Dragon issue because I was seeking old back issues. A very kind and very talkative man by the name of Lou Zaki answered, and I swear that man kept me on the phone for most of 45 minutes chatting. He didn't have the issues I was seeking, but he had a lot of advice for me how to go about my search. I will forever remember that talk with him and thinking in the back of my mind that the long-distance bill for this call was going to kill me. But he was just so nice and we were having such fun chat that I couldn't just shake him off the phone. I think he might have also been surprised, happy to talk to a female D&D'er, as we weren't very common back in those days. No, you were not. Do you have any Lou Zaki tales to tell? Yeah, my relationship with Lou is great. He's still alive. Last seen wandering in the desert out west. But I told that story a few weeks ago. He got lost trying to drive to his children's house. Anyway, I got a Lou Zaki story. Lou Zaki should be credited with Game Science Dice. He was the first one that said, okay, let's make honest, fair, true dice. And he came out with Game Science Dice, razor edges, needle points, and it was good quality plastic, and they weren't printed, or they were stamped but not colored. Now, somewhere or other, Lou got a deal on what are called, to I guess, plumber's crayons. They're used for marking pipes. I don't think they're as common today because I think they were more used for marking steel pipes. Anyway, it's a crayon about this long, flat, and about third of an inch thick or so. And they came in several different colors. And Lou got a deal on them. Somewhere. I mean, somebody was going out of business or whatever. So the next thing you know, next con Lou shows up at, he's got dice that have marked in numbers. And of course, they're a little more expensive now. And he's got crayons, dice markers to sell. And I don't know if this is true or not. I heard that he got them for like 20 cents a pop and he was selling them for 75 cents or $1. And he cleaned up on them. And that was Lou. Lou was a can-do kind of guy. And for years afterwards, you'd see Lou sitting in his booth. It was always one of the most cluttered and sort of messy booths in all of Gen Con. And he'd be sitting in the corner, marking dice. And when he got fun, he'd be throwing them in a big box of marked dice. But he did come up with Game Science Dice, and they did make everybody else change. So, good for you, Lou. You once mentioned the Boule was inspired by the old Saturday Night Live Landshark skit. No, the name Landshark became the Boule's common name, and that's where it came from. The Boule came out of my head as this little armadillo-like nasty thing that ate ponies and well, not little, rather large armadillo-like thing that ate ponies and hobbits, or halflings. So, no, were there any other monsters or Rosetta jokes from popular culture or in-game? Not to my knowledge in the American games. I have a feeling that a lot of the stuff in the Fiend folio had to have been tongue-in-cheek from the Brits. Or it's just that their sense of humor is so different from ours by several degrees that it just seems like they're silly. What was your favorite character to reach high levels back in the day in either Gary's Greyhawk campaign or another campaign. I didn't play much. I had a 12th level magic user, Kelnor the Blue. He was pretty cool. Favorite published D&D adventure and why? I'd have to go, because of its sheer novelty, its scope, its breadth, I'd go with probably the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. Just because it was enormous, it had several side adventures besides the enormous city to fool around in, and it was the first time anybody had gone to that depth to show how a city might work. Finally, pizza, thin, regular, stuffed, or Chicago? Thin, cracker thin. Oh, here we go. Glad you gave your nice praise to City State Invincible Overlord. That was also the Judges Guild product that impressed me the most. I got it way late, but it must have been an extra amazing for when it was released. Oh, it was. It was astonishing. I cracked it out of the envelope it came in that morning in the mail, and I must have sat at my desk for an hour and a half just looking through it and reading bits and pieces. And finally, Gary asked, why are you so quiet in there? And I said, you won't believe what the Guild just came out with. Another cool Guild adventure was Dark Tower, which many consider to be the first mega. I guess it does basically qualify. The book was really a great deal for the day. R.I.P., rest in peace, 10 LGKs. As far as Appendix N goes, I've enjoyed reading many of the works listed. I've just started reading Fritz Lieber's story of Fafner and the Grey Mouser, and I'm enjoying immensely. I've enjoyed Robert E. Howard's story for years, so why I put off Lieber's work for so long, I do not know. Paul Anderson's 3 Hearts and 3 Lions is also an excellent read. Do I have any fictional works that really stand out to me? Well, yes, I went and grabbed a couple when I downloaded this. There's an author that I really, really enjoy. His name is Hans Cummings. He has 2 3-book sets out. The Foundation of Drak Anor. That's capital D-R-A-K dash capital A-N-O-R. And the first volume is Wings of Twilight. And I love it because it's a dungeon come to life in that you step through the veil, you go through the 4th wall, and now you're what you'll see. Wonderful read. He has a second series called Scars of the Sundering that is very, very good. Great fantasy. Where else can you read about protagonists, a minotaur, and some kind of little reptilian thing, and running around being great buddies doing doing deeds. And then he has a new series started that the first book is called Crows of Summer. There are 2 other authors I'll recommend. Marcus, M-A-R-K-U-S, Heights. He wrote The Dwarves and the 2 sequels. Very excellent. Very, very fun point of view. Very fun. Okay, there's another. Yeah, the other one, it's, let's see, I wrote it down and now I can't read it. The book is called Orcs, First Blood, by Stan Nichols, Nichols. There are 3, I believe, just as there are 3 of the Dwarven books. Excellent read. Excellent read. And you will not look at orcs as just bags running around full of experience points to be opened. I promise you, you'll see them in a different way. It really improved my gaming. It really did. They were no longer just vermin running around waiting to be exterminated. I think anything that makes you think outside the box is a good deal. I really do. And those books all definitely, those three authors definitely think outside the box. What are some good adventures to change things up from the usual kill, save, and obtain adventures? Anything that requires a great deal of outdoor travel. Not, in my opinion, not nearly enough people, DMs, GMs, whatever you call yourselves, pay enough attention to the perils and the joys of traveling overland. Depending upon the size of your overland map, you can spend an entire session traveling 3 hexes, 75 miles, finding your way through a rainforest or whatever, fighting off the local flora and fauna. Because now, it's not about killing shit to get rich, it's about killing shit to stay alive. And that's a whole lot different. Sure, there's experience points to be earned if you're successful, but I don't know, you could throw in the odd occasional something outdoors, a man-eating plant, and you could have a few non-digestibles scattered around in the grass. A man-eating tree, wild apes, giant snakes drop out of the trees on you. Anything else you want to think up? Depending upon, I have a tendency to think in the jungle biome, rainforest biome, because I've written some things in there because I thought nobody else had, and so I did. When you played OD&D, did you guys play man-to-man fantasy from chainmail in dungeon settings, or did you use the 120 mass combat? Neither. When I played first, I played in Lake Geneva, and we were rolling D6, but per the original rules, not chainmail. And then my group immediately switched over to the optionals when I got a hold of a Greyhawk a few weeks later. So I never, you want to use chainmail fantasy 1 to 20 when you're doing mass battles. When you've got that retired character who's gone out and built himself a keep and has 30 halberdiers and 12 archers and 24 swordsmen in his employ, patrolling his grounds, warding his castle, whatever. That's when you get into that stuff. But even then, it's harder, because if you only got 20 guys and you're playing 1 to 20, well, there's your 1 infantryman, and now you got to do individual hits. And just, it's not that, it's not real easy. I'm getting ready to run an actual play where I shift between all 3 systems, but most other channels do not use man-to-man, and I wasn't sure it was because the monsters aren't set up that really, or if I'm missing anything. Well, when the man-to-man in chainmail was extremely rudimentary. If the best hero could take 2 hits, and the best monster could take 4, all right, you're looking at a different combat matrix. You're not missing anything. Chainmail is fine for chainmail. Chainmail is fine for miniatures. Use Greyhawk or whatever's in AD&D. I'm sure it's the optional Greyhawk system. Question about Blackmore. Gary and crew already had an existing setting for their game. Then why did they decide to develop Greyhawk over further developing Blackmore more? Gary had Greyhawk. Dave had Blackmore. Blackmore was started earlier than Greyhawk. And Blackmore was Dave's world. Greyhawk was Gary's. And they were separated by couple hundreds of miles. Okay. So Gary ran things in his world and Dave ran things in his world. And maybe at some future point in a world map greater than the Greyhawk maps, in a world map, you'd have seen the Blackmore over there and Greyhawk over here in another part of the world or something. I don't know. That might have happened if there hadn't been the schism that developed. The monsters in the original rules in OD&D before Greyhawk were pretty basic, as were the men and the player characters. They were pretty basic. Everything was based on a D6. Wasn't a lot of wiggle room. You couldn't play if Gary did something in his game and Dave was also playing in it and they didn't know that, and somebody gave an example of Group 1 goes and knocks out all the goblins. Group 2 comes up 3 days later not knowing that the goblins have all been knocked off. You're putting big muddy footprints in each other's world. So unless you agree in the beginning to do something of that nature, it's not always a good idea. Okay, will you tell us about the rules for the Wheel of Blame? Is it available somewhere? Now, there were 2 or 3 replies to this. The Wheel of Blame is what I call my version of D&D that I run at conventions. 7 players, up to 7 players, 5 to 7 is ideal. I have pre-gens that are decent by OD&D standards. They're decent. They're all up in the 30s or 40s hit points. And they have nice, some decent weapons. And they have a whole lot of cures. Heal light, heal heavy. I treat them in like Red Bulls in my games. And everybody they get to choose a pre-gen. And then I have them write down on a note card 2 things. And that's what I say, things, nouns, with as few words and adjectives and adverbs as possible. This one is from a recent game, one of the last games I played online. Somebody gave me a bakery. That's what it says, bakery. And cookie monsters. So they found a bakery and they were attacked by gingerbread man and chased all over. And I take what they give me and I twist it around, and hopefully I twist it so well they don't realize they're on their own card. Here's one that gave me a mouse and red bricks. So what did I have? I had a brick factory turning out beautiful red bricks with 300 Mickey Mouse looking characters on the assembly line. Great big ears, the way I described them, none of them got caught on it. It was Mickey Mouse. Told them about these great big ears that must be great for picking up sounds from far away, and how they were all wearing white gloves, and nobody picked up on it. And we had a lot of fun there. Here's one, porcupine and a pineapple. Well, I don't recall exactly how I did that one. But that's what the wheel is. I solicit words from the players, take 5 minutes, and then we set off. And You could be above ground, you could be below ground, you could be in the air, you could be under the sea. You'll always have sufficient to provide for you in any of those environments. I'm not going to put you underwater and drown you, unless you do something silly. But, and then each encounter requires finding a token. And the token is a caricature by Jim Wampler, me on one side saying, "In Tim we trust," and the other side it's a weird thing, and etched around the edge is "It's not my fault." And everybody has to have one to get off the wheel of blame, or in theory, you walk the wheel of blame forever. So that's the way we play. Everybody gets one. And that's all it is. It's a lot of laughing, a lot of thinking outside the box, a ton of fun. I like to challenge players to think outside the box and think wild thoughts because they might work. I do it to keep my brain in shape. This is like my workouts. I run one of these games for 3 or 4 hours, and my brain gets a workout. Number one, I got to think up the encounters. Number two, then we got to go along and have them and work them out and everything like that. And I get to do it. You know, I'm like Second City. I'm just doing improv here. Fantasy improv, but improv. All right, I think I have another question here. Yes, I do. And then we're done. We have a great DM, but sometimes he takes about 5 minutes to find miniatures, and it gets to be a slow-ass game. When D&D first started, did anyone ever consider turning the game into a sort of set pieces with one encounter followed with a 5-minute break? So it was always was it always open concepts that exist now where the DMs have total control over the pace of the game? The most important answer to that is when we first started, we didn't have figures. Other than the plastic monsters that became the rust monster and the owlbear and stuff like that, there were maybe, if you scoured all the lines available, everybody that was casting back in 1975, you might have found 24 figures that might have been sort of suitable, but only if your fighter was in plate or chain. You couldn't find just guys in leathers and stuff like that. They weren't made, which is why we all played theater of the mind. There weren't any figures to slow us down. And so we might take a break after a long 10, 12, 14-minute session of rolling dice, and then we would do what we called a stop time. Time froze on the cosmic clock in the campaign, and everybody got a potty break, or something to drink, or went outside and took a smoke, whatever. Sure, we did do breaks, but that wasn't a regular thing. It was as needed. That's all, as needed. That's all the comments that I had. So now I'm gonna package this up and then give it to Jim, and Jim will put it together and make it look pretty, and you'll get to see it on Saturday morning. That'll be the same Saturday morning that I'm basking in the sun in the Florida Keys. And on that note, Dodata Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. PSR Infinity, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree.
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.